All right, so I just saw Napoleon, a Ridley Scott film starring Joaquin Phoenix, and is about the legendary Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France, and his relationship with his wife Josephine. And maybe it's my fault for going into the movie with like super high expectations, but I think this movie could have been a hell of a lot better. I really don't feel like there was a lot of focus in this movie. The editing in the first hour is a little all over the place, a little choppy. They use a fade to white several times in the beginning, and I didn't like that style. And I say I had high expectations for this because it's starring Joaquin Phoenix, one of the best living actors, and it's directed by Ridley Scott, one of the greatest living directors. He's definitely one of my favorites. I've liked the majority of Ridley Scott's movies, even Prometheus. He's a legendary director. Of course, a Gladiator and Alien and Blade Runner. Of course, he has directed some duds in the past, like Hannibal, which was the prequel to Silence of the Lambs, and it was god-awful. Bad effects, bad acting, bad direction. And a lot of the blame for, the problems with that movie could probably fall on Ridley Scott himself. But his duds are few and far in between. Like, a lot of people will say he hasn't made a great film since Gladiator, and I think that's nonsense. He made The Martian with Matt Damon, and that's a great film. So, obviously he still has capabilities to make great films. And when I find out he's making a film about Napoleon, a great historical figure, and Ridley Scott has a reverence for history, I'm getting really excited. I really want to see what he's able to pull off here, especially with the battles. And the battles didn't really disappoint. They looked like how they were supposed to look for that time period. And if you know anything about Napoleon, he was a great general. He won tons of victories, the Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that. And most of the history surrounding Napoleon, we usually just talk about his battle victories and his empire that spread across Europe and his inevitable demise when he marches to Moscow and the Russians burn their own city to drive him back, and he marches back to France and loses like 80% of his army just in the march back. And then he gets exiled to an island, only to come off the island back to France, literally walking to Paris, and every troop joining him because the French army loved Napoleon, and they would follow him anywhere. And then, of course, his inevitable demise at Waterloo, when all the countries of Europe band together to stop Napoleon. Now, the movie doesn't miss those beats. Those beats are all in this movie. The burning of Moscow, Waterloo at the end. The movie ends pretty much with Waterloo, which is great. But, this is the part of the movie that I was looking forward to, is the battle stuff. But what the movie really takes an interest in is Josephine, Napoleon's wife, that he divorces because she can't have children. But he continues to write to her throughout his life and stuff. And it's actually the quote that ends the movie, which was France, the army, and Josephine. And the movie really is predicated on this relationship between Napoleon and Josephine. And the first half of the movie is pretty much about their relationship and stuff. And this is where the movie, I feel like, could have had some more focus. Either completely commit to the Josephine Napoleon story and kind of forget about the battles, or commit to the battles and his reign as an emperor and his career, because that's pretty much what the movie's taking place as. You don't see Napoleon as a child growing up. You don't see how he gained the reverence of the army. You don't see that stuff. You don't see the men of the army loving Napoleon, which is what they were in real life. They loved this guy. They followed him everywhere. Even when he was exiled and came back, they immediately joined Napoleon again because that's how much they loved him. And there was even a certain infantry battalion that was super loyal to Napoleon, and they wore these amazing uniforms, and they were feared on the battlefield, and they were usually the last troops that Napoleon would send in to scare the other army. And the myth was they were never defeated in battle, except for Waterloo at the end. And the movie doesn't touch on that at all. And in fact, the movie doesn't really care about Napoleon's military conquests or, why he was so revered by his troops, which could have helped the movie a lot, because there's a very, significant scene in the third act where Napoleon steps in front of a bunch of French soldiers that are, trying to stop him, holding guns to him. He just has a little speech, and they all say, long live the emperor, and they drop their guns and they celebrate with him. That could have been way more impactful if we had scenes earlier showing how Napoleon is building his relationship with his troops. Like if we had scenes like that earlier, then it wouldn't be lost on the audience that he is revered. But instead we just focus on his relationship with Josephine the whole time, and he loves her, but she's kind of a slut, and it's like a toxic relationship, and he has a Napoleonic complex because he can't get her pregnant and stuff, and he feels inadequate, and she's cheating on him, so that makes him feel inadequate. And I mean, the whole movie could have just been called Napoleon Complex, Napoleonic Complex. That's what the movie could have been called, or it could have been called Josephine. You know what? You should just call the movie Josephine. Thinking about it, the whole movie is about their relationship, and the last word in quotations in the movie is Josephine, so maybe just call the movie that. We already have a great Napoleon movie called Waterloo. I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's a movie from, I want to say, the 70s, and it is brilliant. All practical effects and stuff. They had like 10,000, Soviet troops in the movie dressed as, British and French, and they really reenacted the whole battle at Waterloo. So if you just want like a straight up Napoleon movie, maybe Waterloo is better served for that. If you want a story more about his, personal life and stuff, I think this is the better Napoleon movie for sure. And that's what Ridley Scott does. I mean, he has the tendencies to make amazing battle scenes, right? Amazing action sequences and stuff. But all his movies are about like personal relationships and story. It's like the story and relationships are like the most important thing in Ridley Scott movies. And he tries his damnness in this Napoleon movie to get you invested in this relationship between Napoleon and Josephine, and it definitely softened Napoleon and made him likable in the movie for sure. But I don't know if we needed so much. I don't know if we needed all that. We could have probably cut a half hour out of the movie of the relationship and focused more on his conquests, I feel. And it probably would have made for a better movie, at least a faster paced movie. This movie is very slow. It's a slow burn. So if you're not into historical films, if you're not into slow burn films, this is not the movie for you. Not the movie for you. You're not going to like it. But, if you like history, obviously Ridley Scott does embellish facts. He does dramatize things to make things more interesting. He did it in Gladiator. If we all remember, in Gladiator, was thumbs up mean? It means life, right? It means don't kill him, thumbs up. But in reality, historians say that thumbs up, back then meant death, meant okay, kill him. And thumbs down meant no, spare him. So obviously Ridley Scott changed that little detail because it's more dramatic to see a thumbs up and have it mean life, because that's what we as the audience equate a thumbs up to. It's something positive. It doesn't mean death. So those little changes are fine. And he does that in this movie. But yeah, I mean, I am disappointed in the movie a little bit. There could have been more. I definitely wanted more of Napoleon's conquest and then Napoleonic Wars and stuff. I thought that was what the movie's going to be, because that's really all the trailers are. You see a little bit of the Josephine storyline, but you wouldn't think it's 2 hours of the movie, you wouldn't think that's what the whole movie's about. I still like the movie. I don't love it. It's not really Scott's best. He's made a ton of other better films than this. Is it better than Hannibal? Yeah, of course it is. Is it better than Ridley Scott's lesser works? Yes. Is it better than Exodus, the Christian Bale movie? No. I think Exodus is probably better than this. But still, I was surprised to see the middling scores this movie, Napoleon, was getting when I walked out of the theater. I checked, Rotten Tomatoes and all those aggregate scores, and I'm like, it's getting middling, mixed reviews from audiences and critics. No one can decide if the movie's good or not. And it's definitely a functional, serviceable film. There's nothing outright bad, but it is a slow burn. And you could tell a lot of love and care was put into the history of it. Costume design, settings, all that. It just looked great. And you could tell Ridley Scott has a reverence for, history in itself. And as a director, he's not going to get too many more films to make in his lifetime. You only have so much time in your life to make a film. And he chooses to make films like this. So it must be what he really wants to make. And the details are pretty on point. But once again, if you're going into Napoleon expecting epic battle IMAX sequences, that's not really what's going to happen. There's 3 big battles in the movie, and that's it. I mean, there are the best parts of the movie, but that's not why you're going to it. It's really just about Napoleon and Josephine's relationship. And I probably would give the movie an 8 out of 10. just for the detail and like the love put into the movie. If I was to get my hands on this film, I would re-edit it. I didn't think the edit was very good. I would cut out some of the Josephine stuff because it's still kind of debated whether or not he said that at the end of his life, his final words on his deathbed. France, the army, and Josephine, like, that is debated still. There's some witnesses that say he said something completely different on his deathbed. So, it's interesting to make a whole movie about a possibility, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe, he didn't say that at his deathbed. And I think a movie just about the career of Napoleon, seeing his rise in the military and then his conquest of Europe and then his fall in Russia and his ending at Waterloo, I think would be enough of a movie on its own. That would be interesting enough on its own. I don't really think you need the melodrama with Josephine, but I get why they did it. We're trying to make a story. We're trying to make relationships and connect with the audience. So I get why Ridley Scott would want to go down that route. But once again, it just feels like it's losing focus. Like, we were focused on Josephine, and then we get a big battle, and then it's like back to Josephine and big battle. It's like, I don't understand what the battles, how those infer on his relationship with Josephine, other than the fact that when she dies, then we finally see him lose at Waterloo. Like, so the whole time she's alive, he's winning battles, and then when she's dead, we see him lose at Waterloo. So it's like, it goes back to the quote that's in the movie that they say several times to each other, and that's, "You are nothing without me." These two characters say it to each other several times. So maybe that's what the movie could be boiled down to, that Napoleon was nothing without Josephine, and Josephine was nothing without Napoleon since she withered and died away during his first exile and stuff like that. So, if you look at it that way, it is kind of a touching story. That's why I say it's a very competent made film. It's very well done. It's Ridley Scott. But if your expectations aren't right going in, you're probably not going to like it at all. If you're expecting all battles, that's not going to happen. If you're expecting the whole movie to just be about Napoleon, that's not going to happen either. It's about his relationship with his wife. That's the main point of the movie. So you got to accept that going in, and maybe you'll catch some things. Because, now looking back at the film, there are some things that the film is interweaving with Napoleon's life and his relationship with Josephine. So there definitely is depth to the film. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. I probably would rewatch it one day for sure. Anyway, that's it for now. Let me know if you've seen Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix and directed by Ridley Scott. Let me know in the comments below if you liked it or not. Hey, that rhymed. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.